What's up, Marvel fans? I'm Steven from the Hills Maniacs, and today I'm going to be ranking every single one of Marvel's live-action Disney Plus series that have come out as of 2024, which includes WandaVision all the way up through Agatha All Along, and then later on down the road I'll probably add the other shows that are coming out in the future, like Daredevil, Born Again, things of that nature. I'll add those and do another ranking and see where those would fit in here as well. I will say this, I will not be including any of the like the just one episode specials that they did, like the Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special or Werewolf by Night. I won't be including those. I don't consider those to be shows necessarily. I'm talking more of like their live action, and also the animated, like What If is also technically part of this. Those kind of series that have like 6 or more episodes or whatever, things of that nature. And I won't be including the I Am Groot little mini specials either. So those are the things that will not be in this video. So without further delay, let me get started. Okay, so including Agatha All Along, there's a total of 11 of these Disney Plus shows for Marvel. So I'm going to be ranking each of those from number 11 being the worst, obviously, to number 1 being what I felt was the best series that they've done so far. So starting with number 11, I put She-Hulk. I think this show was kind of like a mess. I feel like the 9-episode structure was too long. I probably talked about this in the past, but I just felt like the show was just kind of all over the place. It was trying to be, I know they were branding it as like a comedy, but I didn't think it needed to be. And that ending as well, where they kind of just erased everything because Jennifer Walters can break the fourth wall, and she kind of just broke out of Disney Plus and went into Marvel Studios and like rewrote the ending and stuff. It made everything feel like it didn't matter because we got the ending that she wanted instead of what we wanted. And each episode really wasn't tied into the next ones like in all the other shows. I know they were trying to be different. I know you got like that courtroom drama type stuff they were trying to throw in there, but I just don't think it worked. And I think it was just too comedic to really feel like a Marvel show. And I don't think it really gave us a good look at who her character is. I feel like maybe like a darker, more serious show might have done that better, and maybe even just limited to 6 episodes instead of 9, because they had a lot of free reign essentially, and with the 9-episode structure to do a bunch of like extra episodes that had nothing to do with anything, or that just meant to be funny. And even throwing like Wong into this mess and stuff, it kind of just takes him down a little bit because he's supposed to be the Sorcerer Supreme since Strange got blipped away and that kind of thing. So he's got that burden of being that person, and now he's just like joking around with Jennifer Walters and stuff on this series, and it kind of just takes away everything serious about the MCU and just kind of threw it out the window for a few cheap gags and that sort of thing. It kind of just felt like too childish to me, almost like a child wrote this show. No offense to any of the writers or anything like that, but I just felt like it was a big mess of a show and didn't really fit in with the rest of the MCU. Now, number 10, I put Miss Marvel. The only reason is because this show didn't really have a proper like villain to it necessarily. Like they originally started with Kamala's like ancestor being the villain sort of, and wanting to bring her world into their world, and that's kind of that's kind of what an Avenger would fight, really, that kind of threat. And then they kind of just went away from that when she got killed in like the second to last episode or whatever. And then the Department of Damage Control technically became the villain of the series because they're still trying to hunt down Kamala because she's causing all this damage with her powers. So really, in a way, then they're the antagonists of the show. And I didn't really like that. It felt kind of stupid to me, like, of all the potential villains they could have had for this, especially seeing that Kamala has that sort of like cosmic link to like Captain Marvel and that kind of thing, and has these like, cosmic abilities. You'd think that would attract some kind of cosmic threat, which it sort of did at first, but just the direction the ending to the series went, I didn't really enjoy it. And I know this was meant to just be like, oh, well, this is a kid in school, like, learning about her powers and that kind of thing, and just building up to her getting her powers and fully accepting herself as a hero and that kind of thing. But not really much happened in this show compared to some of the other ones, where you get like all that action and those tense moments and that kind of stuff. This one really wasn't that. It was more of just like a high school drama type thing with some superhero stuff sprinkled in there. This one also felt like it was trying to just basically fast track Kamala's entrance into the MCU and fast track her getting her powers and everything so that they could have her set up for where they need her in the Marvels movie, where she and Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau keep switching places and that kind of thing. They needed her backstory to get out of the way, so they just kind of did whatever, I guess, to sort of get her to that point, which I don't like it when they do that necessarily. Like, I know the shows are meant to do that, like they're introducing us to a new character that we're going to see later on down the road in one of the movies, but when their origin story is just building up for them to be in that movie rather than focusing on the origin, I just felt like that kind of ruined it a little bit for me. Okay, at number 9, I kind of felt weird putting this one above Miss Marvel, but when I look back at it, I feel like it had a little bit more going for it than Miss Marvel did, and that's Secret Invasion. I enjoyed watching the show up until like that final episode, I think, because the whole plot of it being based around a group of like rogue Skrulls shape-shifting into different humans and trying to survive on Earth and causing all kinds of chaos, and Nick Fury has to put a stop to that. I thought that was a really good premise. I feel like they should have honestly gone with that for like the next phase of the MCU, like the Skrulls existing, and copying the heroes and that kind of thing, which is what we got in the comics in the first place with the Secret Invasion storyline that they had there. And I feel like that could have been really interesting. Like, we don't know which characters we're seeing on screen have either been a Skrull this whole time or been a Skrull for a while or whatever, like got taken over by a Skrull, and it kind of gives you that tension and everything else. And it was sort of wasted with this show, but I liked what they were doing at the start of the show, at least. Those first, I think this was only 6 episodes. I think those first, 5 episodes, I felt like were really good, just leading to, it felt like it was leading somewhere where, okay, well, are the Skrulls going to escape? Is Nick Fury really going to be the one to take down these Skrulls? How's he going to do it? That sort of thing. And even them threatening to create the Super Skrulls and give themselves these superpowers and stuff, that's a Avengers level threat almost. Like, you'd think they could have ended the series with them getting those powers and then having Nick Fury call on the Avengers or something and set up a movie somewhere down the line or whatever, or the next Avengers movie could have been that. But then they blew it with episode 6 or whatever the final episode number was, because they had this whole CGI battle with the 2 Skrulls, them getting all the powers together which apparently were from the blood of the Avengers, in the battle for Earth against Thanos in Avengers Endgame. And even though some of them didn't make sense, I've mentioned this in videos before, some of these people weren't even there. They had Abomination's powers and that kind of stuff. I feel like the only reason that they went to having the 2 Skrulls fighting each other and having the Super Skrulls and all that stuff was probably because they felt like maybe Nick Fury couldn't carry this show on his own. And he really didn't do a whole lot in this show anyway, so that's why it was kind of weird that they sort of based it around Nick Fury as the main character trying to track down the Skrulls. I feel like this should have maybe been a multi-part series or a multi-season show or whatever and build to something bigger, but they just kind of threw it all under the bus at the end of the series. So that's why it's so low on my list, because the ending took me out of it, but I enjoyed the rest of the show. I wanted to see where it went, and then it just built to a climax that never came. At number 8, I have the What If series. The reason this is so low on my list, there were a couple episodes that I really enjoyed from from those 2 seasons that they've had so far, and they are having a season 3 as well coming up soon. But the reason I have this so low on my list is just because I didn't really enjoy it as much as I thought I would. A lot of the premises and plots of each of the episodes were really random, a little too random. I know that's what If is meant to be, but some of these things were just really out there, and that's not exactly what I wanted to see from the What If series. I thought maybe What If was just going to be showing us different scenarios or how different things would have played out if our heroes had made different choices, which is what the Watcher even says in the intro to it, sort of how the choices or one choice can send someone down a different path or whatever. And they did that in like the first episode, and then there's episodes where random stuff just happens. Like, there's no way that thing would have happened had this character done this thing instead. Like, it's all this weird stuff, or like someone else becoming a different hero. Like, for example, the T'Challa becoming Star-Lord because they kidnapped him instead of Peter Quill. Or, Yondu took the wrong kid from Earth and that kind of thing. A lot of that stuff was really weird. And then, of course, the whole combining all of it together to sort of form this super team to save the multiverse in a way, I felt like that was unnecessary and we didn't really need that. They could have just had it be like this 8 or 9 episode thing, just this fun little like look into what things would have been like and how things would have played out if the heroes did different things, or how the MCU would look had different outcomes occurred from some of these battles and that sort of thing. But I felt like they wanted to sort of almost make it an Avengers type thing, so they brought some of the heroes that we've seen throughout the series together, because the Watcher recruits them as a team to save the multiverse from like Ultron and stuff, which I just felt all of that was real. We didn't really need any of that. It kind of wasted like 2 or 3 episodes because they had to show the Watcher like getting these characters and pulling them from the multiverse. It's like, why these specific ones? Like, you could have picked anybody. If there was all these infinite possibilities out there, why would you pick these ones that we've seen to be your heroes to save the multiverse? Like, it kind of didn't really make sense, and that whole last couple episodes of even season 1 and 2 really just didn't make sense and didn't really need to happen, and that's why I put it this low on my list. Number 7 for me is Echo. I just felt like this series kind of just came and went, and I don't really see anybody talking about it that much. I didn't really think Maya was that great of a character anyways. She debuted on the Hawkeye series as like technically the villain. She's the niece of Kingpin, which I thought was an interesting connection there. But having her kind of in her own show, I felt like wasn't really necessary. Like, I said this with the Agatha All Along series, which I'll get into later. I did a video on why that show kind of felt unnecessary. And it's the same thing with this one, too. Like, I feel like they were just trying to, we need a series to bring Kingpin back and to kind of get him started on the path that they want him to be on for upcoming projects like Daredevil and maybe even the Young Avengers. Like, he might be the villain of that, whatever. But we didn't need that to play out in this show. And it especially doesn't make sense that he healed from being shot in the face by Maya. Like, I know it happened in the comics too. Like, he went blind for a while and then got laser eye surgery or something and got his sight back. I don't know how you do that if you got a bullet lodged into your eyeball, but okay. But anyways, I just felt like that whole thing kind of just ruined the ending of Hawkeye where she shot him, basically. And it made that feel sort of pointless. But, like, the character of Maya Lopez doesn't feel like that exciting of a character to me, like somebody I want to see in the next Avengers movie or whatever. And I don't even know if we will or not. I mean, I'm sure she'll help the Young Avengers, like, fight Kingpin or something. And I feel like also Marvel maybe didn't really see that much in her either, because in the promotional material and like the ads and everything for the show, they showed Daredevil being in this show. So I feel like maybe they did that to get people to watch this. Like, oh, we want to see Charlie Cox as Daredevil again, because this will be the second time we've seen him since She-Hulk. And they also kind of did the same thing there as well. They promoted it, showing him popping up in that show, and he was only in it for a brief moment, really. That one episode, and then like a couple minutes at the end. And in this show, he was in it for like 10 seconds probably, because like Maya fought him at one point in a flashback episode as well. So like he wasn't even a focal point of the show, but they made it seem like he was going to be in it and maybe team up with her because Kingpin is involved in this show. But he wasn't. So, like, I feel like that was the hook they needed to bring people in to watch this show. But like I said, I don't hear anybody talking about Echo that much. Not really too much happened. Maybe this should have been lower on my list, but I did appreciate the way that they filmed it, I guess. Like, it had a different aesthetic to it almost, because they're starting to go into this Marvel television phase now, where they're going to make the shows feel more cinematic, I guess. compared to like what they did at the start of this. So like it did have that more sort of like serious tone to it, and it focused more on the characters' like lives outside of being a hero, which I kind of liked in that regard, but other than that, it wasn't really that exciting of a show. And next up at number 6, on the same note as Echo, I put Hawkeye. I just felt like this one was a little bit more of a step above that show, because at least this one was a familiar character that we've seen already. We're kind of seeing Clint in the aftermath of Avengers Endgame, him living with that guilt of Natasha killing herself and sacrificing herself for the Soul Stone, like when he was trying to do it himself, and he felt guilty about that. So we kind of see that guilt on him throughout this series, and it plays into when Yelena comes into the series and fights him and everything else. She blames him for killing her sister, and he agrees with her kind of like he did basically, and he feels guilty about it. You see that throughout the series. I thought Jeremy Renner did a really nice job playing Hawkeye in this show, and of course it was meant also to set up Kate Bishop as one of the new Avengers going forward, introducing us to the first really of the Young Avengers, because I think this show came out first before Miss Marvel, if I'm not mistaken. So like this would have been the starting point for that. I thought the acting and everything was top notch. I thought it was a really well done show for just being about Hawkeye basically, and the fact that they brought Kingpin into the MCU through this show and sort of loosely tied it into the Netflix shows, because it is still Vincent D'Onofrio. Those things, I guess, still did happen. So this is kind of after that, Kingpin getting back into the fold. I kind of liked that twist that he was in this, because I didn't know. I don't think they ever really promoted that he was going to be in it. And they managed to keep it a secret really well. And I feel like that was maybe what intrigued a lot of people, was seeing him in this show and like how Hawkeye is going to tie into like Daredevil and all that kind of stuff. So like having Clint have met Kingpin in the past, I thought was a really nice touch. And we got to look at Clint when he was Ronin during between Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, and kind of the bad stuff that he did there. He was kind of just like a rogue assassin basically. All of that I felt was really well done. It gave us a different look at Clint Barton as a character, and even as the hero. Really, like he's kind of questioning his own heroism, like, am I really a hero? Like, he didn't want to be a mentor for Kate Bishop. He didn't really want to teach her. But then by the end, obviously, he does, and he comes to his senses, basically. And I think he pretty much retired at the end, but now he, like, passed the mantle to Kate Bishop, basically. And having it take place over Christmas, I thought was a nice touch as well. So it's kind of a nice, like, it gives you that holiday feel, while it's also a nice Marvel show to sit down and watch as well. There wasn't really too much that was wrong with it. It wasn't the best show that they've done, obviously, but it was still better than like I expected it to be, honestly. And number 5, I had Falcon and the Winter Soldier. This was the second series that they ever introduced. The reason I have this one at number 5, I thought if you take out all the episodes where it's kind of like filler, where Sam is with his sister and they're trying to get their boat back, like, for their family and that sort of thing, and fix the boat up and everything, and just kind of some other stuff here and there. If you take all of that out, I enjoyed watching this show, watching Sam finally accept becoming the new Captain America, even when the government doesn't want him to be Captain America. They wanted John Walker to be their next Captain America, and he's a big old scumbag. I thought all of that dynamic of like, what does it mean to be Captain America, and like what does the world really need versus what does the government want, or how the government is sort of controlling it. I thought that was sort of feels realistic almost, with how corrupt some governments are in the world. And then you get Sam Wilson kind of struggling with like, should I be Captain America? And he hands the shield over to the government, and then that's how they give it to John Walker. So you kind of get his guilt of like, did I just give up on this? This isn't what Steve would have wanted, that kind of thing. And then of course you throw in the dynamic of like Bucky teaming with Sam to try and stop all of this. It kind of gives you that like buddy cop sort of feel with like the two. They're basically like opposites of each other, because obviously we know what Bucky Barnes' history is as the Winter Soldier. He was a killer, and then you get like this pure at heart guy like Sam Wilson, who's just trying to do right by everybody. And now they're trying to work together. And I like that we got to see how Bucky, during his time in Wakanda, we got to see how he got the mind control basically erased out of his mind almost. Like they figured out how to get that out of him so that no matter what, even if somebody tries to say those code words or whatever, he won't revert back to being the Winter Soldier again. I thought the whole show was perfect for like both of their characters and really showed the dynamic between their two characters and how that can kind of coexist. The only problem I did have with the show was that they kind of wasted Zemo. Like I feel like they should have maybe done more with him in the show. He did play a big role in it, I guess, but like I almost feel like he should have been like a secret twist villain or something that they should have had instead of Sharon Carter at the end, who's apparently actually a villain or something. But other than that, I enjoyed the show, honestly. When I look back at it, I would go back and rewatch it someday, especially with the new Captain America movie being centered around Sam Wilson as Captain America now. Like, I feel like it's worth going back and checking the show out again so you can learn how he got to this point and all that stuff. Everything in this show I felt was just really well done, except for maybe the Flag Smashers weren't necessarily that great of villains, especially since they all kind of die at the end. But I felt like it was a nice follow-up to Avengers Endgame to show us kind of the impact that the snap had on other people's lives that weren't just the heroes. At number 4, I had Moon Knight. I thought this show was like unique in a really fun way. Like I'd never heard of the character of Moon Knight before this point, and I did some research and stuff like on the character before I went in and actually watched the show. And I thought he's like a really interesting character, having that like sort of split personality disorder, and even having 3 personalities in his head, but he only knows about 2 of them. I thought all of that was portrayed really well by Oscar Isaac, even playing the different roles and like having the British accent as Stephen Grant versus that more serious like American, almost like Boston accent of Mark Spector. And then you got all the stuff with like Khonshu and that sort of stuff. I thought all of that was just really well done, and it added to the mystery of it. Like I wanted to see how this played out, like what exactly is going on, like because that first episode you have like Stephen Grant waking up in the middle of fighting somebody and he like doesn't know where he is or anything like that. I thought all of that was really well done, and it makes for an interesting dynamic with the other characters someday, like when he has to interact with the other Avengers and that kind of stuff. At any moment he could like swap to Stephen Grant or swap to Mark Spector, or even his most violent side of Jake Lockley. I feel like maybe you could have done without like the CGI battle between like the 2 gods at the end, but like other than that, I felt like the show was nicely paced. It was really well done. It was just a really fun show, like to go back and watch and everything. And I hope they do make a season 2. If they don't, I do look forward to seeing him pop up in something else again, just because I thought it was a really fun character to explore, and I hope we get to see more of his backstory maybe, and maybe get to see like the Jake Lockley side more, which I think we are going to get, but I kind of want to see how that one came to be as well, like in his head and everything. But I thought Moon Knight was just like a really well done show, and it was something different from what you've seen in the MCU before, which is what I guess really made it feel more unique than some of the other Marvel shows and movies that they've done in the past. At number 3, I put WandaVision. I liked the mystery of the whole thing where like we know Marvel doesn't make sitcoms, so like you have that whole aspect of it where like, well, why is this a sitcom? And I like that they put that into the actual show. Like, yes, it shouldn't be a sitcom. What is going on here? And you got that mystery playing out throughout the whole series, where even Wanda doesn't realize that she's the one controlling all of it, that she created this hex that caused everyone to live out this sitcom reality that she was creating in her mind. I thought it was just really cool when they revealed that it was her that did that, because it shows how powerful she actually is, and how dangerous she is as well, and that we kind of got a better look at that in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I just thought it was really well done. Like the music and all that was really good. The pacing was really good. You can tell like something's going on, and the kind of slow burn. Maybe the 9 episodes was a bit too much, but I feel like it all fit really well in the show. Like they even had enough time to do the flashback episode to kind of show the outside perspective of what's going on, and using characters like Ancient Wu and Darcy and them, showing them reacting to what's going on and wondering why this is a sitcom show. Why is Wanda Maximoff there in a sitcom. I feel like that connected really well to us as the viewer because we're like, well, yeah, why is this happening? What is going on here? And just the whole series building to that point of us finding out everything. I thought they did really well with that, and that's why this has been a critically acclaimed series. I think it won a lot of awards and that sort of stuff. It wasn't necessarily like the best. Like I feel like it got off to a slow start with those first two episodes that are just sitcom episodes with like some things happening that are weird or seem strange at first. I thought it just hooks you from the very beginning, even though those first two episodes are kind of slow. When it gets into the third episode and the fourth one and stuff, and it starts to explain everything, what's going on, that's where it starts to get really good. And adding in Agatha Harkness as this outsider who comes into her sitcom reality and basically pretends to be part of it to try and get Wanda to admit what she's doing. I thought that was all really well done as well. And honestly, it was one of Marvel's like best projects they've ever put out, I feel like, because it was just something we'd never seen before, like doing that kind of thing. When I first heard that they were doing this whole Disney Plus stuff in the first place, and I heard that they were going to make this a sitcom show, I was wondering, well, how is that going to work? And here, the way that they tied it into the actual show itself, like, it shouldn't be a sitcom. I thought that was like perfectly done and really hooks you throughout the whole series, really, because we want to find out what's happening next. And on that same note, then, at number 2, I put Agatha All Along. This show actually surprised me because, like I said earlier, going into this, I did a video before I even saw the first 2 episodes where I said how the show feels unnecessary because it's building up characters that we don't really care about. Like, did we really want to see a show about Agatha Harkness? How does this tie into the rest of the MCU and the multiverse stuff? And it just kind of felt like a pointless show just to bring in another character like they did with like Hawkeye, introducing Kate Bishop and that kind of thing. They're just using Agatha Harkness to introduce Billy Maximoff to the MCU and that sort of thing. Like from the rumors at the time, the theories of that the boy in this, played by Joe Locke, was going to be Billy Maximoff. And we didn't really, I guess that was kind of the hook to get people interested in watching it. Like, well, are we going to find out who this kid actually is? Is he Billy Maximoff? Is he Agatha's son? That kind of stuff. But it just didn't really seem like it was going to be that interesting to me when I was seeing the trailers for it. And I was just like, oh, I'll just watch it just because, it is a Marvel show. I just want to see what happens, I guess. Like, I watched all the other ones. Might as well watch this one, too, even though I think it is unnecessary. And then, now that I've watched it, I thought it was actually a really fantastic show. It was even better than WandaVision, just in terms of, like, each episode ending with sort of a cliffhanger, like, you want to see what happens next. They did it really well in each episode, and I liked that they structured the episodes around the different trials that the witches had to go through on the Witches' Road, and like how each one of them was centered around a specific, or one of the specific members of the coven, and how they had to figure that out, and had the timers in each one and everything else. They were all escape rooms, basically. I really enjoyed that aspect of it because, like, you learn more about each of the characters and like this flaw that they have to overcome in order to survive this trial. And it gives you that look at, like, that's what the Witch's Road is meant to be. If you want the prize at the end, you got to overcome your own demons and that kind of thing, and like become a better person or whatever out of it. Whatever that specific witch was dealing with, that the trial was focused on. So I felt like that made each episode a must watch because now we get to see, okay, well, here's the fourth one. It's probably, which characters are going to be about? Who's it going to be focused on? What are they going to have to deal with in this trial? That kind of thing. That was an interesting way of structuring the episodes and just structuring the show overall, because that was what most of the episodes were. There was, like, I think 5 different trials, so that was essentially 5 of the 9 episodes were about the trials. And that, like, opening episode of, like, Agatha is still trapped in Wanda's spell that she did at the end of WandaVision, where she left her as Agnes, and her kind of having to break out of that. I thought all that was, like, really interesting. And then, of course, when you get to the later episodes, it's where the mystery starts to really unravel, and then things kind of start to make sense now based off everything that's going on. That's really the most interesting parts of it. I won't really spoil it too much here. exactly what happens in the show, go watch it because I thought it was really well done. And I don't want to spoil the kind of cliffhanger that like the last 2 or 3 episodes really kind of have. After seeing it, I can admit that I was maybe wrong about it a little bit, but there was still some stuff that I felt like was just unnecessary. Like, we still didn't really need this series. It's kind of hard to talk about this one without spoiling anything. I kind of just liked the mystery of it more, just a little bit more than WandaVision's. This one just has a little bit more because each episode has its own little mystery to it, which I kind of enjoyed when I was watching it. And finally, that leaves what I felt was the best Marvel Disney Plus show they've ever done, and that's Loki. Specifically, I mean, season 2 was just phenomenal, but even season 1 really, that build up to the ending where you find out that a variant of Kang the Conqueror was actually He Who Remains at the end of time. I thought that was like a plot twist that I didn't see coming. Like, I knew that it was going to build somewhere, but I didn't see Kang being the one there. And especially after they announced that Jonathan Majors was going to be playing Kang, like, long before that show came out, I wasn't expecting that. So, like, when I saw him, I was like, oh, that's Jonathan Majors, that's Kang. And they never really addressed him as Kang in this series either, until, like, later on when he plays him in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Then you can go back and watch this and be like, well, yeah, that's a variant of Kang. I just thought the way that they made this whole series build up to the finale with Loki basically having to save all of the realities and becoming the branch that keeps all the timelines together and kind of holding all the timelines, sitting on the throne at the end of time himself, sacrificing himself in that way, where he has to live for the rest of his days holding the multiverse together, essentially, and being a tree to keep all the branches in check. I thought that was all beautifully done. The music score and everything for that last episode I thought was really good. Like, seeing Loki have to do that because there was no other way. They had no other choice because the multiverse was breaking and that kind of stuff. They spent that whole second season trying to figure out like why the branches were starting. They were trying to find variants of Kang the Conqueror and that sort of thing. I thought the whole series, though, like having it centered around someone like Loki and then realizing that there are various different versions of Loki out there in the multiverse, I thought it was kind of funny in a way too. Like seeing all these different ways that Loki, or seeing all these different variants of Loki. Like there's one that's just like rides a bike and that kind of thing. There's one that's like a police officer or something, whatever, or like the mayor of some town and that kind of stuff. And it introduced us to concepts that like we got to see later on, like with Deadpool and Wolverine being set in the void most of the movie. That started in Loki. He was sent to the void. That's what happens when things get pruned. And so you got to see what the void looked like with all these different timelines and stuff from these different timelines being pruned into out of existence and ending up there in that barren wasteland, which was known as the Void. Just everything about this show, I feel like will never be topped, really, in a sense. Like, just in terms of taking a character like Loki, who was just this dastardly, like, villain character that was all about himself. Like, all he wanted in life was to just be a king. And, Thor took that from him, Odin took that from him, and then, of course, when he's just starting to, like, become selfless at the end of his life, Thanos kills him. And then to go revert back to that because we see a different variant of Loki that ends up being the star of this show, like this being the Loki that wasn't really reformed yet, hadn't lived out that life yet, and to take that kind of character and flip him on his head, essentially, and make him this really selfless character by the end where he becomes a king and everybody will like acknowledge his existence. I just thought all of that was like really well written. And then tying the whole Kang story into this, even though we obviously that didn't go where Marvel wanted it to with the whole Jonathan Majors situation. But for what it started out as, I thought this was really well done and a nice way to set up Kang as the villain going forward, like using this Disney Plus show to do that. We see the kind of person that he is because he created like the TVA. All of that, all the acting from like Jonathan Majors and Tom Hiddleston and everybody, I thought the whole show was pretty much just flawless from top to bottom. I would recommend that if you're looking for one of the Disney Plus shows that you should watch. I definitely think you should check out this one. But there you go, guys. That was my ranking of all the Marvel Disney Plus series. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section. How would you have ranked all these series? Like, what order would you have put them in? That kind of stuff. And let me know your favorite moments from like each of these shows as well. Also, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching this video, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one. I like the premise of it being centered around like, does the world still need Captain America almost, and like the government stepping in to like, well, we're gonna make a Captain America, so they give it to so they like hand pick John Walker to be their next Captain America without really seeing if like America wanted another Captain America. Like, oh well, Steve Rogers isn't here, so we're gonna make another Captain America.